let it grow. I'm at war with it, but it's hard to let it go.
Pulse rifles. Yeah, not really anybody's go-to weapon choice when it comes to PvP. I mean, let's keep it real. Why would you handicap yourself and use something considered to be non-competitive and inconsistent when you could use something easier to use that actually has better results? Auto rifles, scout rifles, and even some of the sidearms in Destiny 2 are flat out better choices to use over pulse rifles. Before I even get into the meat and potatoes of why pulse rifles are lacking in performance in the Crucible, let it be known that I'm a huge pulse rifle advocate. Pulse rifles have been my favorite weapon since I first started playing Destiny 1. And throughout all the phases of D1, I had a go-to pulse rifle as my primary weapon that I always felt confident using in the Crucible. In the Dark Below, I used the 3 little words. During House of Wolves, I used the 5.58 Orphe. In the Taken King, I used the Hawksaw, then the Suros PDX-45. And in Rise of Iron, it was rare that I ever used another weapon in favor of my Blind Perdition of Death. The weapons I rattled off never let me down once, but can't say the same about pulse rifles in Destiny 2 because as of presently, they get outperformed by auto rifles a lot and most scout rifles, especially the Might of Multi-Tool, which is odd because back in Destiny 1, pulse rifles belonging to the same archetype as the Hawksaw had a 0.87 second time to kill, and this is my favorite archetype of pulse rifles because they were so middle of the pack and reliable. If you already didn't know, the 450 RPM pulse rifle archetype is the Destiny 2 equivalent of the Hawksaw archetype from Destiny 1. But back to it. The Might of Multi-Tool and scout rifles of its respective archetype had a 1 second time to kill, which is obviously slower than 0.87 seconds, but the Might of Multi-Tool itself was and still is incredibly consistent and has such amazing stats and perks that its time to kill didn't even make a difference. But in Destiny 2, the 450 rounds per minute pulse rifles share the same time to kill as the Might of Multi-Tool archetype of scout rifles at 1.20 seconds. So if you were to think logically, you'd probably assume that these two archetypes of weapons would equate to one another in reliability, or that's at least what I would assume. But the sad truth is that scout rifles as a whole have a lot more going for them than pulse rifles do because passive playstyles are more rewarding in Destiny 2's PvP, and you'd have a lot more luck playing passively and team shooting with scout rifles as opposed to storming forth with a pulse rifle, since pulse rifles are only effective at mid-range and a tad bit beyond that. The fact of the matter is that there's a day and night difference between how PvP is played in Destiny 2 when compared to how PvP is played in Destiny 1. In Destiny 2, success in PvP relies on how good of a team player you are, and a lot of the multiplayer maps in this game have longer sight lines, so engagements occur more frequently at longer distances. This is where scout rifles succeed at, but also where pulse rifles struggle at, because to reach maximum damage with a pulse rifle, every individual round in a 3-round burst must connect, or else you'll lose every encounter with your enemy, leaving with a sliver of health. Trust me, it happens to me all the time. Even when I'm going against a scout rifle user at pulse rifle range, I frequently experience the same issue. This clip right here says it all. My teammate and I easily took out the first opponent, but the second one was noticeably using a Might of Multi-Tool. The final burst of my weapon would have landed if high caliber rounds didn't cause me to flinch and knock me off target, which caused me to gunfight. Now, this encounter probably would have turned out in my favor if it weren't for high caliber rounds, or if the Nurgle in its respective archetype was a bit more powerful. And I say this because in the beta, each individual round in a burst shot of the Nurgle and Nightshade could crit for 22 damage, 21 damage at the lowest. In a full game of Destiny 2, the highest I've ever seen is 21. And my question is, why is this archetype not allowed to retain its power from the beta? Please enlighten me, because the answer definitely is not along the lines of Bungie not wanting to make past mistakes to be reiterated. If the goal was to prevent this archetype from being too dominant like it was in Destiny 1, because if Bungie's goal was to prevent past mistakes from reoccurring, why is the multi-tool returning exotic in this game when it was incredibly popular and consistent and performed much better than it did in Destiny 1? Almost solely due to high caliber rounds, which was removed from the weapon in a patch. Pulse rifles across the board don't need a buff, but the 450 RPM archetype needs some serious love. I've never been a type of person to cry nerf, but I'm always in favor of underperforming weapons receiving a little buff so that we can see more variety in the Crucible. And if this archetype was to be restored to what it was doing in the beta, we'd be one step closer to making Destiny great again. It's been real, everybody, but that's all I got for y'all for the time being. Don't forget to drop your video concept suggestions in the comment section. But until next time, 1LHD over and out. Keep it smooth.